Hi, I'm smiling because I've had an amazing birthday today, and I want to say thank you so much to every single person that reached out to me, every single person that was kind to me. It has just been a day full of love, and I feel so much gratitude in my heart, so much joy, so much peace and love, and I'm just so grateful. I'm grateful for a new year of life. I'm grateful for everything that I've been through, the ups and the downs. I'm grateful that God has brought me out of a dark place, that He saved my life, and that I am filled with a community of people who love me and people who care, and people who are also on the same journey that I am on. And just, I am so incredibly grateful for every aspect of my life, and for the things that I complain about, that I will find myself frustrated about. They're insignificant in comparison to Jesus' glory. And when I compare it to everything that He's done for me, it doesn't compare. He is amazing, and I felt like just coming on here and sharing um, how I feel. I feel just incredibly blessed and incredibly happy. It's a happiness, a different kind of happiness. When I was happy prior to encountering, prior to being saved or encountering Jesus, happiness was different. Happiness to me now, I feel this overwhelming, intense joy in my heart. It is like a burning sensation, and this peace, and it's just, I feel the Holy Spirit within me. I feel His holy presence and His love, and it's just an incredible feeling. And just, I have so much to be grateful for. I want to share part of my story, and I've shared it one on one with people before. And at first, it was something that I was ashamed about, and that I couldn't speak about without crying, until I got to share more and got to do healing, and Jesus saved me and helped me forgive, and I went through soul care. It's a great book. I will post a picture of it. I think I have in the past. Um, you've seen it on my story, but I can post a picture after this so that you guys can see the book that I'm referring to. But I went through this guided process, um, of like 7 principles and applying them, and I have found incredible healing. But it is not because of the work that I put in. It is not because I was strong enough to do it. It is because Jesus helped me. It is because He healed me. It is because He gave me the strength and the will and the desire to get to know Him and to ask Him to help me. And I cannot recommend soul care enough. But to share my story, I want to share it boldly. This is something that I have said, oh, I want to be able to do this in the future, to just tell people about my story so that others can hear, and it can touch those who need to hear it, so that it can stop the, I don't know if stigma is the right word, but it can stop that shame that people feel like they can't share something like that. It's too personal. Or some people don't even know how common it is for you to go through something like that. because it's not shared. I don't know if that made sense, but when I was a little girl, I was 5 years old. I was in a car accident on Christmas. It was about an 8-passenger van. I think it was about 8 of us in the van. And we got into a car accident. The van flipped over, and I lost my mom and dad. My aunt, my cousin's mother, passed away that day as well. And my male cousin, who lost his mother that day, was paralyzed. He became a paraplegic. And my brother, from my dad's side, he was in a coma for, I'm not sure, minimum 2 weeks, maybe a whole month. There was my uncle with, I believe, some spinal injuries. Every single person in that vehicle was hurt. Besides me, I was the only one that didn't have any significant injuries. I was the only one that was wearing my seatbelt. And so I vouch for wearing your seatbelt. I don't care if it's uncomfortable. I think that it can save your life, and the chances of it being harmful are way less than it helping you. So wear your seatbelt. Tell the others in the car to wear their seatbelt, because your decisions, small, big, we live in a world where you say it doesn't matter, like it's my life, what I do doesn't affect anybody else. That is a lie. Every single decision that you make affects other people. Every single sin that you do affects other people. It does. Their decisions to not wear their seatbelts, maybe if my parents had their seatbelts, they'd be here. So I got off topic and went on a little rampage about wearing your seatbelt. But so after the car accident happened, a lot of my memory I blocked because of trauma that I went through. And as the years have gone by, as I've become an adult, I just turned 26. Memories have come back, whether it's certain things that trigger them, whether it's certain conversations, they've come back. So after I lost my parents, I remember having a big family. It's all over in family portraits. The family kind of divided. It was very devastating. And I went to go live with my grandmother. She's my mom, but I went to go live with her from my mom's side. And my brother went to go live with his dad. So we kind of were separated, didn't grow up together. Now we're close, and I'm so grateful for his life. And I'm so grateful for my life. I'm so grateful that I didn't die in that car accident. So my grandmother raised me, and she was the breadwinner in the house. It was my grandma and essentially my grandpa. And she was busy making money. She worked under the table. She was hustling, figuring out ways to bring money. And she also had a gambling addiction. She went to the Mikosuki, which is a casino, every day, every night. Like, she really wasn't focused on like what was going on in my life. She, just figured I was okay. Like, she didn't pay attention to like what I was doing at school, who I was hanging out with, none of that stuff. Like, she didn't pay close attention to me. And since she was busy making the money for our household, my grandfather was the one who was watching over me and taking care of me. But um, she didn't know that he wasn't necessarily taking care of me. He sexually molested me for years. I don't remember how it started. I can't remember. I don't know how young I was, as young as I can remember. It was my normal, and I blocked out a lot of that. I didn't understand it at first. I remember it being normal. I loved my grandpa, but he had a inappropriate relationship with me, and as I started to get older, I think as I became like 12 or 13, I started to know that it wasn't normal, and I didn't like, I wanted it to stop. I wanted it to end. I was manipulated into not saying anything. I was told that that they wouldn't believe me, or that if I said anything, that I would be taken away from my grandma, and that I would end up in an orphanage, and that my grandma would go to jail, and all these other things. That's what I mainly remember. And so that put a fear in me. It put the fear in me that nobody would believe me. Oh, I remember that. I remember this, that people would think it was my fault. And he said because I started it, and I believed that. I can't remember how it started. I believed it in my head. I believed it to the point where it became something that I was so ashamed of. Like, I wanted no one to know. So many fears. Fear of people not believing me. Fear of people being disgusted by me. Fear of ending up with even less family than I already had. Sorry. So I put up with it and fought it as much as I could without telling anybody what I was going through. And it didn't end until he passed away from liver failure. I was about 16 years old, getting ready to go into high school. Maybe I was 15. I think it was I can't remember. Something like that. I was 15, 16 years old when it finally ended, and he passed away from liver failure. Because he was an alcoholic, and he would get drunk every night, or on the weekends. I think it was every night. And he would become verbally abusive too. And so I saw verbal abuse like that towards my grandmother a lot. And I actually remember the day of his death. I remember feeling a sort of relief. I remember the words that he said to me, the very specific words that he said to me. He was dysphoric, confused, and he was asking to see his woman in Spanish. He was asking to see his woman, and I remember my grandma was there, and one of my grandma's best friends was there. And she said, my grandma's friend said to him, "She's right here, Esther's right here." That's my grandmother's name. And he's like, "No, I want my other woman, the real woman." Backstory: because my grandma and him were separated. They never were together. They had separate bedrooms. She only stayed with him because she felt bad that he was an ex-con and he had nowhere to go. She tried to break it off and kick him out of the house once, and he cried and begged her to let him stay. So she did, because she felt bad for him and because he was helping her take care of me. So that's why she put up with him. And I just remember how scarring and how disgusting I felt from those words that he said in that moment. I remember leaving the ICU and going into the private waiting room and just crying, and I wasn't crying because he was dying. No, I was happy. I was happy that he was dying. I was crying because of what he said and how disgusting I felt. And it was a secret that I kept with me for years after that. It was incredibly difficult to start talking about that. I started by telling a boyfriend, and just every single time I told the story, it became a little bit easier to tell, but I couldn't tell it with great detail the way that I think I'm telling it now. But I could barely say a few words without crying. And I grew up going to a church, a Baptist church. I went to church every Sunday, and I went to church every Wednesday for Bible school. And I remember I loved going to church, and I got a boyfriend. My first boyfriend at church. I was very young. I was 14 years old, and he ended up cheating on me with a girl who was part of the church, and other people within the church that were also friends of mine. Other members of the church knew that this was going on, and I just experienced, the church hurt. And it sounds silly, I was it's the last straw, and I was so just angry. It's not that I didn't believe in God. I didn't stop believing. I had moments that I doubted, but I didn't stop believing. It was that I was so angry with God. I didn't understand. If he was so good, how could all these things happen to me? I had such a victim mentality. I ended up feeling what I went through made me seek love. I became a people pleaser. I wanted to be loved and appreciated. And as I've gone through the soul care and just have gone through the process of healing, I discovered that it is because of my grandma. I discovered that I was actually more upset with my grandma than I was with my grandpa, with my abuser. I was mad that she didn't pay attention to me, that she didn't give me enough love, that she wasn't affectionate, that she didn't know me. She didn't know anything about me. That's how I felt. And I couldn't tell her. She was the most difficult person to tell, and she now knows. She has known for about a little over a year, maybe 2 years. It was hard to tell. I don't remember what day it was. But I told myself that I wasn't telling her because I was protecting her, because she was an older lady. She's gonna turn 85 in March, God willing. And I told myself I wasn't telling her because it was only gonna bring her harm. It was gonna hurt her to know that. It was only gonna bring her pain. That there was no point. It was so long ago. It was so long ago to me. That was in the past. I didn't need to deal with it. I didn't need to think about it. It didn't affect me, but it did. It did affect me. Even if I denied it, even if I pretended like it didn't happen and literally forgot. No, I didn't forget everything, but I just put those memories somewhere in my brain that I couldn't even access. And the truth is that I was not only protecting her. Yes, that was part of the reason, but I was protecting myself because I was scared, because I believed those lies I was told when I was a little girl. I was scared she wouldn't believe me. I was scared that she would say it was my fault. I was scared. I think the biggest fear, that she knew all along and didn't do anything about it. And so I was seeking something, seeking for love, you know, trying to please people, trying to be perfect. I fell into the people pleasing and perfection, and I wanted to be loved, to have a relationship where someone truly loved me. And it was because my grandma didn't give me that, and because of the disgust that I had within myself, I felt like nobody could love me if they knew that. If, like, I believed that about myself. I believed that I was unworthy of love, and I didn't know that I believed that. But that was the number one lie that I told myself, that you believe about yourself. And I'll go into that later, about the lies that you believe about yourself versus speaking the truth, what God says in scripture, to battle those lies. And I came up with a list of the top lies that I believed about myself, with a list of scriptures that goes against them, and I'll share that afterwards. But fast forward, I have several relationships. I battle with just, I guess you would call it dependency, and again with the people pleasing, where I just wanted to be loved so badly. And in April of last year, I went through a pretty bad heartbreak. I mean, I was very devastated, very heartbroken. And it's crazy because I can still say this. To me, that pain that I felt from the heartbreak, it was like the worst pain of my life. Thinking about everything that I said that I've gone through, that was just one of the worst pains ever. Maybe because it's so fresh, and it was one of the most recent experiences. And I just felt like my life was ripped apart. I was very, like, control, in the sense of, like, I had a picture of what I wanted my life to look like, and it was ripped from me. I had hopes for the relationship. I thought that I would marry the person, and I was really in love. And when things ended, I just felt my life falling apart, and I was trying to find things to fulfill me, to give me a sense of purpose. You know, the world tells you, like, you got this, girl power. you don't need him. Now you can have fun. You can do anything you want to do, just manifest it. And I don't know, I can go on and on about things, but I started I was more active. I was working out and doing yoga more and going running, and I went to sound healings and sound baths and got like these cards, not tarot cards, but they were like, pick a card and it's like your spirit animal, this and that. And I was just trying lots of different new hobbies. I was just trying to not feel the pain that I was feeling. And I would drive by a church every day on the way home. Always there's a church on my route home, and I never really paid attention to it. But as I was going through this pain, I would get so upset with myself because I would feel good. I'm like, okay, I feel good now, and then suddenly I'm in shambles crying again. And it was so frustrating to me because I felt like I was healing and I was back at square one. And as I was going to this church, suddenly I started to look at it. Every day when I was driving home, I would look to the left and just look at the church on the way home. It just was calling my attention. And it's like that a few weeks. And one day I'm driving home from work and I'm like, I'm gonna go to church this Sunday. I'm gonna go there this Sunday. And so I got ready that Sunday that week. I got ready, I got dressed. I go to the church and I have the biggest panic attack. I'm not a person who gets panic attacks, and I was having a panic attack in the parking lot of the church. I was freaking out. I was nervous. There's people greeting outside of the church, the standard welcome. Excuse me. And I started thinking about what I was wearing. I started thinking about how I didn't know anybody. I started thinking about how I wasn't super early. That all these thoughts were flowing into my head, and were saying you should just leave, it was, you should just leave, just not go in. And it was so overwhelming. But I was also in that mentality, I am strong and independent, and I can do hard things if I say that I'm gonna do them. And I already got dressed and I'm here, so I'm just gonna get down. I'm just gonna do it. Just do it. Just do it. That was it. And before I got out of the car, I had a moment, and I was like, and I haven't been to church in so long. And I talked to God, and I said, I'm here. I'm not gonna leave. If there's something, that I need to hear, let me hear it today. And that was it. And I didn't say it word for word, but basically, to me, it was alright, if I'm here, show me you're real, Jesus, talk to me. And I walked in the church, and the pastor told a story about the prodigal son. And I don't know if you know the story or not. I basically, that Jesus was happy that I was there is what I got. That he welcomed me with open arms, and that it didn't matter how long I was gone, but that he was there. He was happy that I was there. And anyways, when I heard that story and the worship and everything, God was speaking directly to me. I felt his spirit so strongly, and I couldn't deny that he was real. I knew it. I knew it that very moment I stepped back into that church. I'm crying out of happiness. And ever since that Sunday, I went to church every Sunday after that. And I went to that church for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then I went to my friend's church. And when I went to her church, I fell in love with the community and the word that I got at that church. I really felt like the presence of God there more strongly, and there was more of a variation of people there. It was a much bigger church, and I started going there. It's food church, and I started going there, and 2 months after that day that I went to church, 2 or 3 months, I got baptized. And I had been baptized in the past when I was younger, but for the first time I was making the decision, because I knew who Jesus was to me. I knew who he was, and I wanted to give my life to him. For the first time, I was truly surrendering to him because I loved him and I wanted him to make me a new creation. And so I got baptized, and Jesus has changed my life and has healed me, and I have grown, and I am just, like I said, I just feel so incredibly blessed. I feel incredibly blessed for how much my life has turned around. I got baptized in July. I don't know the date. I have it somewhere. I have some photos. But I remember the sermon was a sermon called Pots and Possibilities. And the message that I got from it is like, we're so focused on the future when all you need to see is what's in front of you right now. Basically, you got some pots in the kitchen and you got possibilities, and Jesus can use what you have in your life right now. You are already so blessed. And anyways, I did not plan to get baptized that day. They did something different that day. Actually, that's been the only day that they've done that since I've been going to church every Sunday. I was like, spontaneous. They always do their altar calls, but that day it was baptism Sunday, so all the people that were already scheduled to get baptized were getting baptized. But they did a baptism call, and if you were there and you felt like the Holy Spirit, or you felt the need, the calling that you want to give your life to Jesus and you want to get baptized, and basically they did a baptism call, and I got up and I got baptized. And anyways, a while later, I had this question, and I'm like, my grandma never went to church with me. She dropped me off. She dropped me off every Sunday and every Wednesday. I was like, how did I even start going to church? And I asked my grandmother, and she says, I don't know. There was a friend of mine one time that was telling me she goes to this church, and she invited us, and we went, and you wanted to keep going back. And she started picking you up, and my grandma didn't even know this woman's name. An angel. She started picking you up and started taking you, and you loved going, and you asked to keep going, and I just started regularly taking you, and I went to that church for years, and I realized that I was never alone, and you're never alone. That even though I was going through so much, that was the way that Jesus was there for me. When I was my safest, when I was safe from harm, when I felt safe, when I felt like I was with my family, when I felt joy and happiness, was when I was at church. It was when I went to church on Sundays and Bible study on Wednesdays, and it was when I was with the youth group, and it was when I went to camp every summer. I loved my church. I loved being there. And Jesus gave me that family. And even if I didn't know him, if I didn't fully understand his greatness and his love, then those seeds were planted, and he claimed me as his daughter. And even though I was angry with him, and walked away and spent so much time away from him, he was always with me. He was always there trying to get me to hear and to come back to him. And when I did, he welcomed me with open arms. So I wanted to share this story. I felt like it was time to share the story. And I wanted to do whatever it needs to do. I want Jesus to use it. If you are a woman or a man that has gone through any kind of sexual abuse, it is so much more common than you think it is. And you know what I learned through soul care and through healing with Jesus? That whatever you bring into the light does not have power over you. It does not have power over me. I am not a victim. I am much more than a victim. I am actually, hopefully this doesn't pause the video, I'm actually going to read those lies that over the years, without knowing, they were lies that I believed about myself that shaped my personalities, and I'm going to read them and read the scriptures before I end the video.